Uncle Mud here. Since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by the sod houses or soddies of the great North American plains. I got to peek in the windows of one a couple years ago in Gothenburg, Nebraska. There's a link to that video in the comments below. But now that I've had a chance to get a better look at one, I wanted to share it with you. The Edwards County Sod House and Museum in Kinsley, Kansas was closed for the season when we came through in October of 2020, but Julie was kind enough to let us in and give us a special tour of their little piece of history, plus a whole lot more small-town Americana. For some reason, it seemed perfectly natural to start our visit by talking about the weather. Enjoy. The other day here, it was the coldest it's been since 1888.
Monday, the low got down to 7 degrees.
Wow, yeah.
I went for a high. It was the lowest it's been.
Wow. Yeah, in the 1880s, it was supposed to have gotten artificially low because of the volcano or something.
Right. The
volcano in Krakatoa.
Right.
Well, Julie and the Edwards County
Historical Society
Museum caught our eye on our way out here. And particularly what's in that room, the sod house. And I'm really excited to go in there in a second, but I wanted to show you this lovely collection here, or collection of collections. I mean, look at this, all these little tiny pictures that Gertie Klein had collected when she was alive.
That's just partial. That's just a partial of it.
That's just a little bit of the collection. But look at all this stuff. Great Lakes Boot Camp. And these guys going off to war.
World War II. That was
during World War II.
Was in North Chicago.
Yeah.
It's located in North Chicago.
Yeah, I grew up in North Chicago. I remember that.
What's that?
Yes. Do you get a lot of visitors here with the kids from school? Until this year because of the COVID.
Correct. Our numbers were way down.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom is the log cabin lady at a county historical society near us, or has been there, and would show the kids how they lived. Because trees are weeds where I live, so.
Yeah. Here they're a commodity.
Yes. Yeah, there was I was reading about some guy who had lived in a soddy on my way over here, how his, they said that the one native tree in the county had been cut down before he even got there.
Cottonwoods.
Yes.
If you want a good book about the sod, that is the excellent book. It tells you, it has all kinds of information on that.
Look at that.
That is an excellent book. It has all kinds of different illustrations, how they were made, why they were made, different shapes that they were made in.
Fantastic.
It's an excellent book for sod houses.
And there aren't very many left, are there?
No.
I've seen, this is the second recreation I've seen, but there aren't very many originals.
Not originals, no, because they deteriorate in the weather, of course.
Well, the kind of mud building I do is called cob, which is an Old English word for lump. And they let them go because it was considered a poor man's house.
Yeah.
And even though the brick houses that replaced them were horribly cold because of the wind whistling through the cracks, like the frame houses that replaced the sod houses were miserable, but they were a poor man's house, so they let them go, which is kind of silly, but we people are silly, aren't we?
Yeah. We don't like dirt.
We don't like dirt. Well, I can understand not liking dirt. My wife has met me at the door with a power sprayer on the occasion. Well, look at this.
That is the sod plow. This here, this is when they were constructing it.
When they were building it in the 1950s, you said?
1950s.
So this recreation was built in the 1950s. And I see they plastered over it a bit at one point.
Yeah, that's the reason they put the building around it, to preserve it.
Yeah.
And then they would use that sod plow there.
There we go.
And
Yeah.
that's how they plowed up the dirt.
Well, so the normal plow was designed to break up the sod But this cutter was to just turn it around.
And then they would use this contraption over here. They would use this contraption to smooth it out, you know, make the bricks. And then they would cut it with that.
Drag it and cut it.
And here's the...
Do you know how they got the pink color for the pink section of the inside wall?
I don't know. They probably need it.
This looks like they used a little bit of the same soil as a mortar. Two different accounts that I've read said that they would put the sods upside down. One of them, the account said it was because they were letting the roots grow into the one above it to try to connect the sods, but the other account said it was because they would put it down and then cut the bare top of it to level it. It looks like at one point they tried to repair it with concrete, which would have had everything splitting apart even more. Notice the thick door frames, because these sod walls were 2 feet thick usually.
I'm just mud, yeah, probably just mudded over.
1957, the high school students helped build this as their first museum. Oh, look at that over there, barbed wire collection. Oh, look, this was fancy here. They had boards for a ceiling. The early Soddies didn't have the luxury. They might have rafters from the local trees, or because the milled wood would have been very expensive to import. This is, yeah, they would wallpaper the inside of the sod, or plaster it with earth like that, or they might lime wash the inside.
They didn't let anything go to waste. If a horse died or a cow died, they would just strip it and make their rugs or whatever, coats. We do have a buffalo coat back there too. We have some bear skin gloves out there. Or bear.
Usually a Soddie was a single room, and they'd have a rope bed frame under a mattress stuffed usually with the local tall grass.
Or corn.
Or
that's where the expression sleep tight came from.
Oh, from twisting those up, yes, so that you weren't sleeping in a dugout canoe.
Right.
Yeah. Hand-woven rugs here, and this used to be somebody's horse. And if they were fortunate, they'd have a wood stove to warm the place up.
Well, back then, we used this for fuel.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Chips.
Cow chips.
That was one of my mom's jobs as a child. As kids, they had to go pick up the cow chips for the fuel.
Those are basically dried.
Yes, you had to do the dry.
They're basically dried grass that has been pooped out by a cow, or before that by a buffalo. And they didn't have any trees, so they would burn these things and they would smolder. But they would burn so they could stay warm a little bit. Look at that oven that the chimney would go through, and you could bake your bread in there. They still make something like that for camp stoves and whatnot. This room is cooler definitely than the rest of the place, just from the mass of the walls holding the temperature of it, having the temperature turned down for the night.
Even in the summertime when it's hot out there, it's still cool in here.
It feels cool inside of here.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about this, that the sod houses generally were much more comfortable than the frame houses that were replacing them, because the wind would whistle through the frame walls. the cracks in the walls, but people thought that only poor people lived in sod houses or in the dugouts. So 1875 is
1873.
1873 was when this county was established.
Also, Kinsley was established.
Kinsley, the town of Kinsley, and was that part of the land grant? The land.
Land
grants, and so you'd come out and prove up a claim
160 acres.
160 acres.
It had to be proved up within 5 years, but you had to have a structure on it within a year.
So you had to build a house and live in it, and show by certain standards that you were actually farming it and using it, and then it was yours. And there were enough people back east and in Europe desperate enough for a chance that they did it, even though it killed a lot of them. Yeah. Do we have any idea what percentage it killed?
I don't know for sure.
But you see a lot of stories of people dying in a storm going out to check on the barn. Or
we did have, of course, we had prairie fires back then too, and we did have a local resident who was killed in a prairie fire back in the 1800s. She's buried out at the cemetery. But so that's the only one that I know that's been killed from that.
I was just reading on the way here of a woman whose husband went to try to get some timber for fuel for the winter, and she had a baby while he was gone, and she delivered the baby herself while taking care of her older 3 babies who were still babies. And her oldest daughter remembered many years later that her mom made them all some food and told the dog to watch them because their dog was very loyal and wouldn't let the kids get into trouble.
Wow.
And gave birth to a baby boy.
Wow.
Wow. But this would have been a relatively big Soddie.
It would have been. Usually when they started out, they were about 10 by 14, and then they would add on to it. And of course, all the churches, the schools, everything was made out of sod back then.
Yeah. Well, when they didn't have enough boards, they'd even drape cloths so the dust wouldn't fall down in your food.
Yeah. And the bugs. It kind of kept some of the bugs and the rats and the snakes and things from falling too.
And they would cover the walls with pieces of newspaper to try to keep the dust down.
And I had read in one place too, to keep the dust down on the floor, they would excuse me, tamp it, but they would also use the blood from the animals that they slaughter.
Yeah.
And put it on the floor to set.
Ox blood will coagulate it. Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, this looks very much like the wall of my bedroom that I've made. I've sculpted, and to make the dust stay down on it, I've used a milk paint, clear milk paint. Mm-hmm. So just spoiled milk mixed with a little borax, and curdled, and the whey washed off of it, and then painted back on the walls, and it's clear, but it keeps the dust from being annoying.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, back here, here we had so many dust storms.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There was that, and we had dust storms this summer. But it's just, and they would say that the women would go crazy because of the wind. They might not have left the homestead for a year or more. The men would sometimes go, but the women always stayed home, and they would go crazy with the wind blowing constantly.
We built a rammed earth building down in Amarillo that you didn't realize the noise of the wind that was so constant until you'd come inside and you'd shut the door and it would suddenly be silent because the walls were about this thick. And then suddenly you'd go, and you realize that you were all tensed up from that sound.
Right.
Wow. Well, this is so beautiful. And it was just a community thing to try to build this to show.
Well, something, when they got out here, usually it was time to plant.
Yeah.
So they didn't have enough time hardly even to build a house. So that's one of the reasons they built these so small. It was just have some place to shelter.
Get out of the weather, yeah. Well, and you can see the cracks up there because these buildings would settle over time.
Oh, yeah.
And they would have to keep repairing them. But they were trying to build them super quick. I just love that you've left this so that you can still see the sod. Branding iron from one of the local ranches. A little brand up there. How fun. Buffalo grass.
That's basically
Is there still any buffalo grass? Have they been restoring any of the prairie?
My yard's all buffalo.
Ooh, yeah.
It's all natural. It's all natural grass. We don't have anything planted with buffalo because if you water out here, you can water and water and water and water, and it doesn't look so good. But one rain, our buffalo looks just as good as the neighbors who water all the time.
Good for you.
So,
Good for you.
It's just natural. It's never been done anything.
And this had a metal roof up there?
I think it's a shingle roof.
Shingle, okay, yeah. Because the originals would have had a sod roof also, and there would have grown flowers on there if they had them, but that also would have helped keep them warm.
Or if you had a dugout, you don't have a cow in the
Yeah, have the cow fall in on you. Well, you can see how these are eroded over time before they built the building around it. See, this is a nice protected building now. And with that sod, has a little bit of clay in it, but it will crumble over time. I've heard of people having barbed wire collections, but I've never actually seen one.
Oh, really? Yeah, we've got 25 panels of this, and we got more in the back room, too. People just collect different I didn't know there were so many different kind of barbed wire until I started working here. Yeah.
Some people actually made their fortune inventing and selling barbed wire because that was what could allow you to have a cattle run. Right.
Those are the Santa Fe Trail ruts that run through Edwards County and Pawnee County. My husband pays for them over the ones at the cemetery. He said you have to go up and then you go down. You go up and then you go down.
The ruts from the Wagons?
Santa Fe Trail.
Yeah. So Santa Fe Trail went to Santa Fe, New Mexico.
From Independence, Missouri.
From Independence, Missouri. And
we were on the wet and dry route here.
The wet and
dry route.
The wet and dry route. Why did they call it the wet and dry route?
Because it depended on if it was a dry year, you'd want to go on the wet route because you'd have
something to drink.
And if it was a wet year, you want to go on the dry route so you wouldn't drown.
So, and this one was which?
We were both.
We were both.
I'll show you on a map.
All right.
The mammoth tucks down here and all these teeth and stuff here came from Edwards County out of the sand pit.
Oh, arrowheads and petrified wood. It's funny how you just think of dirt out here.
Yeah.
You don't think of all the stuff that would have come.
Well, this used to be the sea a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes, they was dredging up some of the sand pit. They would dredge up some of the mammoth stuff and the teeth.
And the train tracks were just so important. The train was so important to making it an actual city.
Exactly. That's why Kinsley survived and some of the other ones didn't, because the trains route didn't go by their towns.
Yeah. Some of the machines of the harrows they used to try to loosen up the sod, huh? Ah, there's the dry route. Here we go. The wet and dry route. Macfessel.
After Macfessel, we have a lot of this stuff.
Multiple ruts still running across. My goodness. Some of these old wagons. Wow. Well, I think it's really great that the town would have felt so civic-minded as to do something like this, and to, instead of throwing up a modern building, say, no, let's do something that ties us to what was here. I suspect that in the 50s it was just at the very end of people remembering some of the things.
Yeah, because some of them, well, there's a few people that still remember living in South House.
Oh, okay.
Not very many people left anymore.
Yeah.
People lived in until about 1920s, so we still remember some of them in the 1920s, so as children they lived there.
What fun. Well, thank you so much. Now, the website for the museum here is
The Edwards County Historical Society Museum.
Edwards County Historical Society Museum.com. And there's probably a lot of really good stuff on there. But this is just right off of... Are we still on 50 here, or where are we?
We're 50 and 56. It joins right after.
50 and 56.
50's over here, 56 over here.
And we're in kind of the center of Kansas here.
Pretty much.
Yep.
I mean, it's a little further north for this, but yeah.
But this
in
is...
the middle.
Thank you so much. So here we have several of the cattle brands from Edwards County, and they heated them up and put them on these boards for us to see. Wow. Blacksmith tools from the county here.
Yes, oxen yoke too. This is a homemade one. Oxen yoke and then a double one and then a single yoke.
That concrete block machine.
Well, the hoof trimmer hasn't changed at all over the years.
Yeah, no, they haven't. Why? They if it works.
A lot of people have changed things that work to worse things to make more money.
Yeah.
But I'm glad the farriers are not suffering from that.
This, I think, is the original version of that huge truck that we were driving behind all day.
That pickup still runs too.
That's a beautiful pickup.
Yeah, found out in the pasture with bullet holes in it. So somebody just used it for target practice. So well, we need to make a better story than that. Run, shoot.
If we're gonna restore this, we need better stories.
That's right.
Oh. Dancer and Prancer and Vixen and Blitzen and Donner. That's why they only got this. Santa only got that far this year, huh?
Well, there's a couple more that are missing. I don't know what to do there. But there's 2 of them missing.
Is that like some sort of wild goat?
Yeah, it's not good.
I don't see any mountains around here, but did they
They
have?
probably were from Colorado.
In this water bag.
Advertising curtains for the school, huh? It's funny, it would just be tucked away for so many years.
Well, they were throwing that one away.
They were
That one was out on its way to the junkyard.
Oh,
Somebody saw it and said, no, we're taking it. The little one back there was from Oakley, which is down west of here, and this one is from Kinsley.
the Al Annette Coffee Shop. Wow.
And we've got a couple of things up there with that one.
And somebody painted all of this because these people had sponsored.
Right.
In Kinsley. These were the sponsors for the plays and such. This is great. Not just this lousy thing in the back of the program, but you got painting. I got a painting of what I do.
We have a theater here too. It was built in 1917, and we have the original screens for that too. The original painted screens for that. Unfortunately, we're not open right now because of the COVID.
So the theater is still being used? That's fantastic.
Well, 1917.